Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Product in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight on some of the exceptional technology leaders we have as part of the LA community. With us today is Derek Kwan. Excited to have you here, Derek.
Hey, Ethan, super excited to be.
Oh, this is going to be an incredible episode. I've been waiting for this one for a minute, so thank you for joining us. But first, a word from our sponsors. Product in LA is brought to you by Uruit. Do you need help completing your 2023 roadmap items? Uruit is a digital product development agency with over 15 years of experience helping US-based companies build web and mobile apps by embedding directly into their Scrum teams. With expert full-stack software developers, UX and UI designers, product managers, strategists, DevOps engineers, architects, machine learning experts, and more, when you work with Uruit, you're getting the collective knowledge of the 150 technology enthusiasts that are part of the Uruit team. We're also brought to you by the Product Managers Association Los Angeles, available at pma.la. They are the largest professional organization for product and designers in LA, with more than 3,000 members from over 500 companies. They do a few things. They host monthly meetups. They organize the Product Leader Council, where CPOs and heads of product connect in small 6 to 8 member pods. And they have a mentorship program where they connect working product managers with students from underrepresented groups to help build a better and more diverse next generation of product people. To learn more about PMA-LA, go to pma.la. To learn more about the mentorship program, go to pma.la/mentorship. Our guest today is Derek Kwan. He is the Principal PM for Microsoft Supply Chain Center at Microsoft, and his past roles include COO and VP of Product at Retention Science, as well as co-founder at Doco Labs, and he's held product roles at Yellow Pages and Yahoo. And one interesting fact you may or may not pick up on his LinkedIn page is he is an avid poker player. Derek, is it semi-professional? Is it professional? What's the line there exactly for a professional poker player?
So I think professionals are people who do it full time and nothing else. So I don't think that I can take the mantle of being a professional, but I do think I am semi-professional. It's really insane the amount of hours that I put in, like studying it and playing it over the years to get to the point where I am today. But poker is so fascinating in the sense that there's still so much more to learn. It just seems quite infinite at this point in terms of the information that you can gather from it.
That's great. And is it online, in person, or both? How do you play?
I mostly play in person. We don't get to play online too much in the US anymore. There are certain states where they're still starting to build some compacts where some poker operators are getting licenses, but we still don't have like kind of cross US and actually cross like country online poker. Like since 2008, I think was when we had what we called like Black Friday, where all the poker operators got shut down in the US. That was a really dark day. But live poker is still alive and well. There's a lot of poker going on in LA as well as in Vegas.
That's amazing, and I do want to come back to this, but first let's start from the beginning. Really excited to learn more about your journey into technology. Was this always part of the plan? How did you find yourself in product and just kind of the tech field in general?
It's so interesting now because I've been in technology for a good 17, 18 years. So it's been a very, very long time. And I think people that are becoming product managers now actually can come out of school, having, if not taken a product management class or two, or maybe even an entire course or vocation around that, like
Right.
Entrepreneurship, right? There's so many things that kind of guide you almost into that craft. But back then, I mean, I think even for you, probably all the way back then, we didn't have all these formalized classes. I feel like we were just figuring stuff out as we went.
Right.
And product managers back then were kind of like these like misfit toys, right? We weren't like supreme domain experts at anything, but we're good at a lot of things, right? We're good enough at technology. We probably aren't a coder, but we're good enough at technology to understand how technology works. We understand how stacks work. We understand how data moves in and out of systems and gets processed, right? But we still knew how to sell, and we knew how to, kind of do sales and marketing and be able to translate things, to those different like departments and groups. So we really sat centrally, right, in this role. And the reason why I bring them all up is because I took an extremely non-traditional path into technology. I graduated college with an English degree, and I
Nice.
actually was floating around. I think I started off my career as a substitute teacher. I was just kind of bouncing around job to job, and I actually grew up in New York, and I migrated from New York to the West Coast, back I think like something like 20 years ago, and it was just kind of jumping around job to job until I landed at this company called Overture, and I went in there as an editor, and Overture was
That
the
sounds familiar.
yeah, it was basically what became the search engine marketing piece of Yahoo. So Yahoo acquired them about a year after I joined, which is how I got into Yahoo.
There
But
you
I
go.
joined them as an editor because it was really funny. I went into this recruiting firm and they gave me a test, and I actually sadly didn't do that well in the English portion, the writing portion of it, even though that was my degree.
That's
But
that's ironic. How did that work
but
out?
I did well in the technology one. So they were like, hey, you know what? There's a pretty good role here where it's a little bit of blended tech, a little bit of a blend of editing. And then from Overture, I kind of just started jumping, from group to group. I went from the tool that I was using as an editor to a QA engineer on that tool. I went from QA engineer to a reporting developer where I was like literally at nighttime, like studying Perl, studying SQL, just so I can get this role. And then after that, I moved into product management, and then from there, I kind of never turned back, right? So it was a rather serendipitous and non-obvious path, but that path let me understand how testing worked. Right? So that's really, really so important, right?
Interesting.
The technology part of the job also taught me how programming worked. And then from there, I feel like I already had some of those business chops, already had some of the kind of product chops. So then it was almost like a natural path into PMing. So I think thankfully most people these days don't have to take such a circuitous route to PMing. I feel like there's a lot more information out there for you to just go consume and get it. But back then I took a very, very circular path to get to where I was today.
Was that all at Amazon? I guess Overture first and then Amazon. Sorry, to Yahoo.
Yeah, it was Overture to Yahoo, and I think Yahoo literally it was like about a year and a half of QA, year and a half of reporting development, and then jumping to the PM and then the senior PM before I left and went to YP.
And how did you make that jump into PM? Was it, did someone show you the way and say, hey, Derek, by the way, what you're doing right now, all these things you're putting together is actually product management, or did you come to it yourself by doing your research? How did that title come into your life?
So I think there's two parts of it, which is, why did I go for it? What attracted me to it? And
Yeah.
then who helped me get there? Because I think people always help us get there. So what attracted me to it was I noticed that there were product managers on these teams, and they were doing some really cool stuff, right? They seemed to be doing product research and user testing, and then really driving the requirements for how things got built. And I was like, hey, I really want to do that. I feel like that might be something I'd be really good at. So I was, kind of talking with them, trying to grab lunches with them, understood what they did, reading through the requirements, not only as a QA engineer, but then also thinking through how I might approach this if I were in their shoes.
Right.
And I just got really, really attracted to what that vocation was. But then it wasn't as easy as just kind of applying and getting in there, right? Each one of these steps, even jumping into QA, that was a big leap from where I was as an editor. And then going from QA to reporting developer was, maybe not as big of a leap, but it was still a leap. But it was people who enabled my shot taking. It was because I felt like I was doing a good job. I always showed hustle. I always showed so much care about the job that people saw that performance, could see me in this other role and be successful. So they kept giving me shots. And I want to go back and just thank all those people for where I am today, because I never would have got there if people didn't let me take shots. So I think for everyone listening to this, when you're at work, also just make sure that it's not just that you're doing a good job, but build relationships with people, right? Those networks are so important inside of the company. But that's really how it happened. It was, just doing my best, doing good work with whatever I was doing and being really committed to it. And then having the right people just help me shot take.
How do you think you built those champions, those internal champions? Because I agree, those are so important. Those are key to people making trajectories and huge jumps in their career, especially from editor to QA engineer to product person, and then you've gone pretty far from there. What were there things that you did consciously or subconsciously to help build those champions?
It might just be because I was building these relationships, not trying to get something out of it. I don't like all the people that I ended up working closely together with, becoming friends with, and people who enabled my shot taking. I kind of felt like I was building relationships just because it wasn't because I needed anything. So it was probably a bit of that it always seemed altruistic.
It was genuine.
Right. And I think also on top of that, it's Overture was a startup when I got acquired by Yahoo, and then we were the search engine marketing portion of Yahoo, which is really small compared to broader Yahoo up in Silicon Valley, and we
Yeah.
were down here in Burbank, right? So this is we started off in Pasadena as Overture, we moved over to Burbank when we became Yahoo Search Marketing, and I still feel like we retained a lot of that type of culture where I think everyone just appreciated like that dedication, right, to the thing that you were doing. You seemed like you always just had the best interest of the product and your team in mind. It didn't seem like there were people that were almost like overly political, I want to say. So I think just being able to fit in that culture, build those relationships altruistically, and then when I actually needed something and it was something that I felt like I would be good at and I had already proved myself on the job, that's probably how it happened. So I think maybe for if we're trying to translate that into advice for others, it is just to be yourself, be genuine, right? Just make sure that you are demonstrating impact and doing your work and build relationships naturally with people, and then good things will just kind of happen for you.
That's amazing, and I love this line of thinking and questioning, I guess, because it's really it is something that's talked a lot about, but it's hard to do, especially as young folks are coming up and trying to figure out how to navigate their career. What were some of the things you said or did once you built those champions, once you built those genuine relationships? How did you find yourself approaching those folks to become champions to help you take the shot?
This was so long ago that
Yeah, I'm
I don't
sorry for
remember the
that.
interactions, but I think that with each role, maybe I always felt like there was something that I was better fit for, right? There was always just something kind of there as the next step that I think I can do more, right? I can have more impact in the role that I have right now. And I wasn't looking at just like what's the next step in this current like ladder, but
Right.
are there like, you know, parallel like departments or groups that I might be a good fit for, right? So I think just looking at things from that kind of lens, then made me see like different opportunities in those areas, and I built relationships with people across a lot of different areas. And I think it was probably just as simple as like, hey, I kind of want to go after this. Do you have any recommendations for me? What do you think my shots are doing this? What are some tips you might give me? And again, this was all altruistic. I think then I was so young, so not confident in anything. I didn't know anything about anything that I probably was even afraid to ask people like, hey, would you give me a reference for this job or something? It was actually more just like asking like, hey, do you think I should do this? And I almost want to say that they're probably like, yeah, why don't you go for it? And I'm going to go help you apply, right? I almost feel like that was some of the interactions, but again, I don't remember them all. But I just have very fond memories of the people that I worked with at Yahoo. Everyone was just so helpful.
That's amazing. And it sounds like I know a few folks who are former Yahoo from that time period, and they speak such amazing things about the company and the culture. And
Yeah.
I think the network continues, at least the people I'm thinking of. That was a great time, an amazing company to be at, and a great time to be there.
Yeah, yeah, and I still keep in touch with a bunch of those people. Yeah, so it's been it's great.
That's amazing. Now I want to go back to the poker. Um, how did that get started, and was there a parallel path here? And what are the parallels, I guess, are you seeing between that and your career in technology? I guess how does it help you in your day to day, if ever? Is there a carryover?
There is extreme carryover. It I think I've always had this. I don't want to call it like gambling. It's just more about like strategic games had always been a huge attraction to me.
Okay.
Almost any type of strategic game, and somehow, some way, I don't know if this like kind of came from my parents or something, but I was always kind of good at card games. Like card games was always something that I was really good at, even like fun like card games back in college when you're playing with your friends, right?
Yeah.
I was just really good at those, and somebody brought like a new game, I would be able to pick it up really really quickly. Um, I also noticed that I was like actually pretty good playing like poker specific games with friends. So I think that's where it just started kind of creeping me towards like, hey, it seems like there's people out there actually playing professionally, doing it on TV. I'd like to do this. So I started going to some of the local card rooms and playing and playing. And then I realized that there was like this whole other element of like strategy and studying behind it. So then I consume myself. And now it's so much different now because now there are things called like poker solvers, which are like these like AI like pieces of software that help you like basically understand all the optimal plays in almost every single situation. They're really, really powerful machines, and it's completely transformed the way that people play poker. But back then, it was just like
Wow.
going on forums, talking to people, studying strategy together, and kind of figuring stuff out. And this just happened for years and years and years, where it was basically um, like a second job for me. Um, but some of those things about poker that overlap with, it's not just, I mean, I think it's especially product management, because product management is so central to decision making and execution, right, in an organization.
Okay.
um, Poker teaches you how to think about the world probabilistically, right? That's probably one of the biggest things. It's like in any given situation, I can get in there with an 80% favorite and still lose 20% of the time. Is still significant, a significant amount of times to lose. But if I can continue to just get things in 80%, 80%, 80% favorite over time, you're going to see, like basically your equity or your expected value get really close to that 80% mark. So then you really just start looking at the entire world in that kind of way, where every single decision that you make leads to an outcome with some amount of like probability behind it, right? So how this might translate to like product decisions, right, is that you can make a bet on a product and it could fall on its face, but you shouldn't be results oriented about it. You should actually go back and think, okay, let me just reprocess the decision making that got me to this point to decide to go do this, and then should I keep going or should I kind of give up, right? But you don't just give up because you took a loss there, because that could just be that 20% of the time that you got unlucky. And there's so many different things around just like taking calculated risks, being able to, it really enforced how important it was for me to study. Like being at the poker table back then, it would take me like minutes to process the most simple decisions, but I did it so many times and studied so much that then it was instantaneous, and I was able
Okay.
to move on, right, to like more advanced topics. And then when I kind of think about how I almost approached product earlier, I probably was not enough of a domain matter expert even in the things that I was like working on, right? It was this. So poker taught me so much more about like work ethic, critical thinking, that it 100% made me a better product manager. But then on the product management side, I feel like a lot of the things that I learned there helped me also be a better poker player around like bankroll management and things like that. So it was, yeah, it was pretty cool how much those things intersect. But I actually do think a lot of the professional poker players, the top ones, are so smart. They're like at a different level of intelligence that I don't think that I could actually reach. And I just can't imagine what would happen if all of these people were actually going out there and doing something a little bit better for the world.
They all became
Because
product managers.
yeah, there's a lot of like, brain power kind of trapped in there, because a lot of these guys are brilliant, right? They came from the chess backgrounds, and even a lot of these like strategy games like StarCraft. It's really amazing the amount of people that get attracted to playing poker.
That is, oh, is like fantastic. And I think the word that keeps coming to my mind here is the probabilistic way of thinking. Can we kind of double click into that one? And especially, I love this idea of, product management, or just software development in general, is a lot about placing bets, small bets, hopefully, and getting the thing right. If you could double click into probabilistic thinking and how that plays into, the development and, maybe small wins and small losses, and how you go from there. So like if you have a small loss, where do you go from there? And if you have a small win, where do you go from there in this philosophy, I guess, way of living?
Yeah. I almost want to reframe this a little bit. So there's a probabilistic thinking when you arrive at your outcomes, like something has already happened, right? So now
Okay.
it's like, okay, so did this, was this in the 20% or 80% probability, right? Did I take the right process to get to this point? Did I do those right things? Um, and in that way, that kind of leads to you, as an example, like a small bet versus big bet, right? So let's just say that there's something where there's a tremendous amount of risk, right? There's maybe a lot of like uncertainty, right, in the future outcomes. That might
Right.
be something where you want to slow down and hit the brakes a little bit, right? But if something, let's just say it's something that's a little bit smaller, where the risks are more well known, but you're very, very sure that you kind of made the right decision to get there, that might be something that you want to just keep going on and iterating on, right? Getting that as an example, if we tie this specifically back to product, getting that in front of users and trying to get some of their feedback, right? So is it that you need to tweak one or two little things, or do you need to rethink the whole thing because you made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
But that's only like a small part of it because it's so important across almost everything that you take the learnings that you get from all the things that you're doing and all the outcomes that you're seeing and then apply that back to your frameworks. Like, how do you make the process better in the future for the 100 other products you're going to launch, right?
Right.
100 other products that you're going to iterate on. And how that ties back to probabilistic thinking is that now if you know that the outcomes of your products are just going to be this like different set of probabilities, right? This weird like sci-fi choose your own adventure can go in sort of any direction. Like, how do you then like change the way that you do your analysis? How do you change the way that you're making your decisions, right? Also, then does it make a little bit more sense for you to make decisions faster, right? So I think there's the Thinking Fast and Slow book, right? That's a great book for people who haven't read that. I would really give that a read because that really, goes down into when do you want to take more time, get more data, and do more research to make a decision, and when don't you want to do that, right? When can you make faster decisions, get things out there and iterate on it? But then when you understand that there's just probabilities behind everything, there's like different outcomes that can happen no matter what you kind of choose to do. That also feeds back, right, to the way that you kind of think through those things and build your frameworks. Frameworks are the most important thing that you can take with you, right? Every role that you have, every
Yeah.
experience you have, take that and put that in your toolbox because again, just like a poker player, the more stuff I have in my toolbox, the more weapons that I have at the poker table with me. Same thing, the more tools that you put in your toolbox as a product manager, the better that you are at your job, right? The more certainty that you can bring to how you're making your decisions across like a whole range of different topics and areas.
That's fascinating. I don't know why this is the image in my head, but there's a Nicolas Cage movie called Next where he can only see 2 minutes into the future, and there's a scene where he kind of it's almost multiplies. There's like one Nick Cage, and then he like breaks off into like 10 different Nick Cages, and he tries these different scenarios. And like for me, it's kind of that idea that you're
Yeah,
placing where you have a small bet and there's like a choose your own venture after that one bet, and it could go in all these different directions. And it's this idea of the probability of this future success and how have the decisions you've made to that point set you up or not set you up for that next step to be successful. And then if it isn't successful, to your point, um, don't get too discouraged because you can find yourself in that 20% bucket that it didn't work out. But then if you're right 80% of the time, in general, that is good enough to have enough success to keep going forward. And
yeah,
if you have enough 80% right bets, you're probably
exactly.
going to have a winner on your hand.
It sounds like a very Nick Cage movie, but it's a very good analogy because if you just have these best laid plans for everything that you do and you think it's just going to be like one outcome for that thing, you're probably setting yourself up for failure. And there's another thing too, is let's just say that you get that exact right outcome. What happens if you made 100 errors to get there and you just got lucky and you try to pile in and repeat that, right? And then you end up like going 6 or 7 months committing your resources to something that's going to be a failure. So that's why being more process oriented and results oriented is really good to help train, like how you make better decisions in the future. But obviously, when you're running products for an actual business, you do have to be results oriented, but make sure you don't lose that process oriented thinking behind
Yeah,
it.
I mean, going back to something you touched on, and this difference between strategic thinking, and gambling, right? So, in this scenario, you do something right, and it's a winner from the very beginning. You don't learn much. You can't take that to the next place, and maybe you can get a nice exit, and that's your life. But odds are
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. It's the strategic thinking, these frameworks that you're building along the way, how you do analysis, how you're making your bets. That's the real goal. That's really gold. And, the goal is to be successful. But if you have a lottery ticket and you strike it rich one time, good. But that's lightning strikes like once usually. So maybe that happens for you, but odds are it won't. And so building these strategies, building these frameworks, and paying attention, especially I guess for folks who are early in their career, but even if they're mid or have been there along the way, thinking back to the patterns that have gotten there is probably also a way to use this no matter what stage of their career they're in.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's awesome, Derek. Thank you so much for chatting with us. We have our one last question. We always like to ask here, grounded in LA. So what is the most LA thing that's happened to you? This can be tech related or not.
I think it's probably just not like a one-time thing, but playing poker, I think you would be surprised at how many celebrities play poker. And I'm talking about not just showing up at celebrity events, but Don Cheadle, as an example, fantastic actor, has been so many things, Iron Man and all those other things.
In the Oceans movie too.
Yeah, Ocean's 11, one of my favorite movies. He just plays, poker at the Commerce. He was for a while. I think I haven't seen him for a while, but he was playing at the Commerce all the time, and just the 5-10 tables with us, right? He's kind of sitting there with everybody else. A bunch of the everyone loves Raymond actors. They play. It's really funny. There's the voice of Patrick from SpongeBob. Plays poker too a lot actually, and sometimes he gets on the mic and he does the shuffle up and deal in Patrick's voice. So it's just so funny how many celebrities that you run into playing poker. It's pretty amazing.
Do you find that there's bluffing skills are better than your average poker player, or how does that play in?
I don't think it plays in at all, and I think there's this misconception that poker's about staring people down or trying to be still and bluff or not bluff, and it's about your body language. But it's not really that. So much of poker reading, like when I know what you have, it's because I've been observing the way that you play. I was observing your betting patterns, right? How much you bet, what position are you playing certain hands, and I can really narrow down what you're doing based on those observations that I'm making, to the point where I don't need to see if there's a bead of sweat coming down on you after you made a bet or something.
Right.
I got what's going on with you. But I think usually when you have gone through your entire list of analysis and you're still not sure what to do, sure, maybe take a glance at the person to see how nervous they look, right? And then maybe make your call that way. But so much of poker is actually just about structured hand analysis and a lot of technical concepts
and frameworks. It sounds like it goes right back into this thing that has been successful for you in multiple aspects of your life.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
That's terrific. Derek, thank you so much for sharing, this probabilistic thinking, how to find champions and how they can help, be catalysts in your career. And love this idea of, you're sitting down at the poker table and you got the guy who was in Ocean's 11 across the table from you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you again for joining us. This has been terrific, Derek. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I'm really glad I got a chance to come on the podcast.
Oh, me too. This is terrific. Also like to thank our sponsors once again. It's the Product Manager Association Los Angeles at pma.la and Uruit. You can find them at uruit.com. That's uruit.com. I want to thank you all for joining us again, and we'll catch you next time on Product in LA.